freezing, so obviously we don't have the AC on anymore. It's just hard for me to find time to record. Today I had some free time and I said, you know what, I'm gonna record a couple of videos so that I'll have some videos for the next few weeks that I can post for you guys. Let's do some tapping. I love the tapping sounds of my Kindle case. This is a book that I read on my Greek channel earlier. Well, let's get some stuff out of the way before we begin the video. Thank you for joining me. I don't even know if I said hi to you guys. This is ASMR to the G. 2 2 2 2 2 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2 1 2. I hope that you guys are all doing well. If you haven't already subscribed to our channel, I would love it if you did. Just click on the little subscribe button on the bottom here. It's free and it'll help grow our channel here on YouTube. As well, if you'd like more ASMR videos from me, I do have another channel which is called ASMR to the G. This one's to the G too, but I do have to the G. And I will post a link down below. And in that channel, I upload ASMR videos in Greek. So if you're just there for the whispers and you don't care what I'm saying, head on over there and subscribe as well. We'd love to have you. So for today's video, I thought that maybe we can read a couple of chapters from some of my favorite books. Not the whole book because, you know, the whole copyright thing and everything. But just a couple of chapters. I did purchase these from Amazon on my Kindle. Obviously, because we'll be using the Kindle to read today. This author I absolutely love. Her name is Tiffany A. Snow. And this series of books is called the Kathleen Turner series. Nothing to do with the actress Kathleen Turner. It's just the name of the main character of the book and of the series. I don't remember exactly how many books there are, but let me check real quick because I was just checking the order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 books in the series. 6 that are a continuation, and 5 that are a continuation. And the last book is from one of the other characters' perspective, which I love when authors do that, because then you can see the perspectives on both sides from both main characters. Well, I'm gonna read a couple of chapters of book 1. I am gonna try to elevate this a little bit more because there's a glare from my light up above. That's perfect. There's no more glare. I'm just gonna maybe back it up a little bit. Let me just fix this a little bit better, like that. Hold on, we're getting somewhere. We're getting somewhere. Oh, that's perfect. Okay. I'm using a new setup. I have a new stand for my iPad to record. I have another stand for the microphone. I have 2 tables. I'm sitting on my bed. My cat's sleeping on the corner. We're ready to go. Okay. So this first book of the series is called No Turning Back. If you guys like the first couple of chapters that I'm going to read, head on over to Amazon and buy the books. Honestly, I think you'll love them. So let's jump to chapter 1. So they're action, romance, mystery. There's a little bit of everything in here. Just have a sip of my coffee before we begin. Chapter 1. Planting your face in someone's lap usually isn't considered the best way to begin a new job. Well, maybe some jobs, but not this job. I was a runner at the prestigious Indianapolis law firm of Gage, Kirk and Trent, a position that occupied a rung right above mail girl, but below copy boy. Unfortunately, that position currently had me face down in the lap of the aforementioned Kirk of said prestigious law firm. Blaine Kirk was a partner and second in charge in the firm. In his early to mid-30s, he was a rich, blue-blooded type and had the looks to match. Tall, dirty blonde hair, green eyes, perfectly even, perfectly white teeth. A small dimple appeared when he smiled. That dimple was nowhere in evidence at this particular moment. I remembered with vivid clarity the phone call I'd had with Clarice, Blaine's secretary, not 10 minutes ago. "Can you please get the Kimmerson file off my desk and take it to Blaine?" she asked. "I'm trapped in traffic," and he texted me that he needed it right away. "Sure, no problem." I did as she requested, retrieved the file, and took it to the conference room on the 3rd floor. When I walked into the room, everyone immediately turned to look. My hands got sweaty and my face flushed at being the center of attention. There were about a dozen people there, all men of course. If that wasn't bad enough, Blaine was the furthest away from the door, at the far end of the conference table. I headed straight for him, the sound of my heels muffled on the carpet, and everyone returned to their discussions, which my entrance had interrupted. I breathed a sigh of relief. Unfortunately, that relief was premature. I was a couple feet from Blaine when my heel caught on the carpet. The papers I had in my hand went flying, and I landed face first in Blaine's lap, like an overeager dog sniffing hello. His hands gripped my shoulders like a vice he tried to pry me off. In my scramble to right myself, my hand landed somewhere it shouldn't, and Blaine grunted. "Oops." The words were desperately inadequate for the situation, but fell out of my mouth anyway. My eyes flew up in a panic to meet his, and I saw his jaw clench and his green eyes flash. Could this possibly get any worse? I winced as his hands tightened on me. He was a strong guy, and he quickly picked me up and removed me from his lap, standing and setting me back on my feet as well. I didn't dare look up to see what expression was on his face, as I could imagine it just fine. "Thank you very much." "So sorry," I gasped out weakly, like a fish suffocating for air. Dropping abruptly to my knees like a marionette with its strings cut, I began crawling around on the floor gathering the mess. The room was absolutely quiet. It had happened so quickly, I think everyone had been stunned into silence. Then I heard the sound of muffled laughter, quickly covered up by coughing and the clearing of throats. Papers shuffled around above me as I scooted around under the table, avoiding the men's shoes and frantically grabbing sheets, heedless of how crumpled they were becoming as I shoved them into a pile. I climbed clumsily to my feet, thrusting the papers now, a disordered and crumpled mess, at Blaine. Mumbling another "sorry," I beat a hasty noise was followed by laughter, and I squeezed my eyes shut in dismay as the door closed. What a horrific ending to how excited I'd been at the prospect of being face to face with Blaine for the first time since I'd started working at the firm. I'd been in silent awe of Blaine Kirk since the first moment I'd laid eyes on him. Lori, one of the paralegals, had showed me around on the first day at the firm. She was introducing me to a few of the other paralegals gathered around the coffee station, all female, when Blaine walked by. God, I love to watch him move, one of them sighed. My eyes followed him down the hall, and I silently agreed with her. Well, look your fill, because that's all you're going to be getting, another one shot back to a round of laughs and sighs. Who was that? I asked Lori, watching him disappear into the elevator. That was Blaine Kirk, Lori said. He's one of the partners and a real big shot in this town. Rich, smart, and absolutely divine. And doesn't he know it? Another girl said. I couldn't remember her name. Maybe when he runs out of rich socialites to date, we'll get a shot, one of them offered. Right, guffawed Lori. He doesn't date girls at work. Everybody knows that. It seemed that quite a majority of the women were enamored to some degree with Blaine Kirk, but who could blame them? After all, what wasn't to like? Blaine was clever and well-educated, successful and ambitious, with a face that made women weak in the knees and a body that made their mouths water. A man like him intimidated mere mortals like me, so I avoided him, admiring from afar, and had never spoken to him until today. Ironic that the first words out of my mouth had to be an apology. I groaned quietly in embarrassment, wanting to bang my head on the solid oak panel door at my back. Hurrying back to my cube, I huddled with my head in my hands, wallowing temporarily in my misery. My phone rang, and I saw it was Clarice calling from upstairs. She and I had gotten to know each other since I'd been at the firm and had hit it off right away, even though she was several years older than me. Hey, Clarice, I greeted her with false gaiety. Morning, Kathleen, she replied. Thanks so much for helping me out. Did you find the files and take them to Blaine for me? Yes, I certainly had. Yeah, I guess, I said weakly. What's the matter? She asked. Did everything go all right? Well, I hesitated. I kind of tripped and landed on Blaine in a rather unfortunate position. She gasped. Then I heard a snort of laughter. So not funny, Clarice, I warned her. She tried to quell her giggles. I know, it's just the image of you. Her thought was cut off by laughter, and I waited in sour silence for her to finish. The look on his face had to have been priceless, she finally sputtered. I tried not to notice, I said dryly, although I was still embarrassed. I could see the humor in it, and a huff of my own laughter escaped. I may have been able to laugh with Clarice, but that didn't mean I wanted to be within 10 feet of Blaine Kirk at any point in the foreseeable future. To my horror, later that morning, I saw him heading down the hallway to Diane's office. Diane Green was the formidable office manager and my direct boss. Had Blaine come to get me fired? I listened intently from my cube as he gave her instructions on something he wanted and files he needed her to prepare, hoping beyond hope he wouldn't tell her what had happened. My heart sank when he asked, "Who's the new girl?" "You mean the new runner?" Diane asked. "Her name is Kathleen." "That friends just carrying on the tradition when I came along. Why? Diane continued. Is there a problem? I held my breath. It had only been a month, but no matter how nice I was to Diane, I couldn't get on her good side. Somehow, I didn't think it would take much for her to fire me, and I needed this job. You could say that, he replied, and I winced at the irritation in his voice. Where is she? Oh God. I panicked when I heard Diane tell him where my cube was. This could not be happening to me. What was I supposed to say? What if he thought I'd done that on purpose? I'd have to get a new job because I'd be too mortified to work here any longer. Tossing aside my pride, that ship had sailed, as well as the thought that perhaps I might be acting more like a 12-year-old rather than a mature 24. I dived underneath my desk, and not a moment too soon. I saw Blaine's shoes as he stepped into my cube. I held my breath, waiting. I noticed he wore really nice leather shoes. They were big. A thought flashed through my mind about something I'd once heard about the size of a man's feet was in the direct proportion to the size of his. I cut that thought off, squeezing my eyes shut in mortification. That was not an appropriate thought to be having about a partner in the firm, no matter how attractive he was. When I opened my eyes, I saw he had finally turned and walked away. I heaved a sigh of relief before climbing out. Over the next several months, I stayed true to my word. I didn't let Blaine Kirk lay eyes on me more than a handful of times. My job seemed secure and I breathed more easily. Today, as I got ready for work, I was grateful it was Friday. I worked 2 jobs to help make ends meet, tending bars several nights a week. Not really what I'd envisioned for myself at this point in my life, but I'd much rather be doing this than a lot of other minimum wage jobs. I didn't have to work tonight, but I did last night, and I had not gotten to bed until after 1. Those nights always made it hard to get up from my day job, where I got to do all the jobs no one else wanted to do. File documents at the courthouse, have the runner do it, get coffee from Starbucks for the staff meeting, send the runner. Carl in accounting needs a lift into the office because he totaled his car again. Kathleen can pick him up. I grabbed my coffee and headed out the door. I lived on the top floor of my 2-story apartment building. It wasn't in the greatest part of town, but I hadn't had any problems. It was a gorgeous October morning, the sun shining brightly with a chill in the air. I was glad I'd added a jacket before leaving. I jogged down the stairs, running into my neighbor on the way. "Morning, Sheila," I said, smiling at her. Sheila often came home in the early morning hours. She was about my age, but her life was drastically different. Sheila worked as a high-priced call girl. Her plan was to work until she had enough money to put herself through medical school and then quit. When I first moved here 6 months ago, she offered to hook me up. I tried to conceal my shock. My small-town upbringing had never been more apparent, and politely declined. I couldn't imagine that kind of lifestyle, no matter how much money was involved. It seemed to work for Sheila, though. She was several inches taller than me and had long, straight brown hair. Being pretty and well-spoken, she could pull off a sophisticated look very well. "Hey, Kathleen," she said. "Off to work?" I nodded. I was running late, but paused for a moment. "Another day and all that," I said. "You doing all right?" I worried about her. I couldn't accept that her occupation was safe no matter what she said about the clientele being upper class. "Oh yeah," she said, smiling tiredly. "I've got a customer now who's real into me. He's been a repeat 5 times now." From what she had told me before, I knew that was good, since repeat customers for her were money in the bank. That's great, I said. I would have asked who he was, but she'd mentioned once before that her clients demanded confidentiality. Is he nice? I asked instead. He's all right, I guess, she said, leaning back against the stair railing as she talked. Not sure what he does for a living, but I think he's loaded. She hesitated for a moment before adding, I just hope Mark doesn't get all weird about it. Mark was her boyfriend. It was a relationship I couldn't really figure out, but it seemed to work for them. Mark was a pretty decent guy and didn't say very much about Sheila's profession. I'd met him a few times and they seemed very into each other. He was one of those quiet, geeky types that I never would have guessed Sheila would go for. I suppose the old saying of opposites attract really was true. I thought he didn't mind. You know, I said, waving my hand vaguely. I wasn't really sure how to put it into words. Didn't mind you having sex with random men for money without offending her. She was very adamant about being a high-priced call girl and not a hooker. He didn't, but he's been acting weird lately, she said, chewing on her lower lip. Lower lip. Weird how? I asked. She shook her head. I don't know, just distracted maybe. Like he's with me, but not all there. I don't know if it's me or us or something else. Sighing, she added, I'm probably just being paranoid. He really cares about you, I reassured her. Maybe he's just preoccupied with work or something. Yeah, she said, not seeming convinced. I guess so. She seemed to shake herself out of her reverie. Hey, I'm making you late, aren't I? I glanced at my watch and grimaced. Sorry, you're right, I'd better go. Dragon Diane will be watching to see if I'm on time, I'm sure. Sheila laughed. She knew I disliked Diane, and that feeling was mutual. Well, get going then, Kathleen, Sheila said, giving me a squeeze on the arm and smiling ruefully. I'll catch you later. Thanks for listening. You bet, I said, giving her a quick hug before hurrying to my car. I drove a 10-year-old blue Honda Accord that ran like a top. Thank God. I couldn't afford a car payment. I felt slightly envious of how much money Sheila made, she told me once, but knew I couldn't live that life. I made a mental note to stop by tonight when I got off work and see how she was doing. Traffic wasn't that bad, and I made it to the firm in just over half an hour. I lived close to downtown Indianapolis, but the firm was in the much nicer northern part of Indy, full of brick office buildings, trees, and wide expanses of green lawns. Pulling into the parking lot, I noticed who else but Blaine Kirk leaving the building. Crap. I was already late, but waited in my car anyway so he wouldn't see me. I carefully sipped my hot coffee and watched him in my rearview mirror as he walked across the lot. He was dressed for court today, wearing a dark suit and tie, carrying an expensive leather briefcase. I wondered if I'd ever be able to look him in the eye again. The incident, as I'd taken to calling it, still made my cheeks burn with mortification whenever I thought about it. Not that there was much cause for me to interact with Blaine anyway, him being a partner and me just a runner. He'd never tried to find me again after that one disastrous morning, though I still wondered what would have happened if I hadn't hid under my desk. Fired me most likely, I muttered to myself. Rumor had it Blaine had ambitions for political office, and it was obvious that he was a natural. Blaine was charismatic and charming. When he walked into a room, people noticed, their eyes drawn to him. The very air around him seeming to crackle with electricity. His face never gave away his thoughts, even when he'd flash his killer smile, the kind deserved. I gave it just another minute or two to make sure he'd gone before I got out of my car and headed inside. I heaved an inward sigh, and as I stopped by Diane's desk for any morning deliveries. This was the part of the day I hated the most. Diane took her job as office manager very seriously, had absolutely zero sense of humor, and was a singularly unattractive woman. Her harsh demeanor only emphasized her sourpuss face, which she never wore a stitch of makeup on. We maintained a stiffly polite relationship. This morning, Diane wasn't at her desk when I stopped by, and for that I was grateful. The stack of deliveries was waiting for me on the corner of her desk, so I grabbed them and headed for the 6th floor. I also had to stop by the 3 partners' office to see if their secretaries had anything for me. The 5th floor was occupied by Blaine and Derek Trent, another partner in the firm, and their secretaries. The 6th and top floor was where the oldest partner and founder of the firm, William Gage, had his office. When I got to the 5th floor, I stopped to see Clarice. Blaine's door was closed and the lights were out, which meant he was probably in court. He had a corner office with windows on 2 walls, and it was gorgeously furnished in rich mahogany. Let me just see how many pages are left to this chapter. I don't think we're gonna finish it all. Okay. Clarice's desk was a smaller version of his, positioned outside his office with the luxury of a large work area. "Hey Clarice," I said, and she looked up from her computer, smiling when she saw who it was. Clarice was only 30 but dressed much older than that, I guess because it suited her profession as a legal secretary. Her dark hair was pulled back into a bun and she always wore sensible shoes. When she smiled, it softened her whole face and made her appear younger and more carefree. "Hey yourself," she said. "On your way out?" I nodded. "I have a stack for the courthouse and some other firms around town today." Glancing around to make sure we were alone, she leaned forward, grinning as she spoke in a low voice. "Do you want to hear the latest?" I moved closer. "Of course," I said eagerly. Clarice and I had a running joke about the women Blaine dated, betting each other on how long each would last, and if the latest would make a scene or go quietly when he ended it. There have been some memorable scenes from the more dramatic ones. Clarice liked Blaine well enough. He was always polite and cordial to her. He just wasn't really our kind of people here in the Midwest. A little too snobbish, way too rich, and a tad condescending. Clarice had told me yesterday that Blaine had asked her to send the requisite farewell flowers to his latest flavor of the month. She took the news well. Some took the news well, and some didn't. This latest girl, her name was Candy with an I, had seemed the dramatic type, and I bet Clarice $5 she wouldn't go quietly. "Okay," Clarice started, as anxious to impart the juicy gossip as I was to hear it. "So the story is she got the flowers yesterday and went nuts, showed up at his house and waited for him to get home. Then she proceeded to scream and curse at him while standing on his front porch. And," now her grin widened, "that wasn't even the best part." I was practically holding my breath in anticipation. What was the best part? She posted on her Facebook page that he had a tiny I gasped, clapping a hand over my mouth. "I know," Clarice said with a mischievous grin, as if anyone's going to believe her. "No kidding," I breathed. Our eyes met and we both laughed. Blaine's appeal was a universal constant. He was over 6 feet of male perfection. The idea that he'd not be well endowed was ludicrous. remembered what I'd thought when I'd been in close proximity to his sizable shoes while hiding under my desk, and my face flushed. "How did you hear about it?" I asked, pushing aside things I had no business thinking about playing Kirk. "Debbie downstairs heard it from her husband, who works with Ryan Dunstan, who's dating Gillian Tate, who's Facebook friends with Candy," Clarice explained. "It's a small world, my friend." "She's either really stupid or really vindictive," I said. Clarice chuckled. "Knowing the kind of women Blaine dates, probably both." "Where is he today?" I asked. "In court," she answered. "An embezzlement case." "All right, well, gotta go. Thanks for the gossip. Catch you later, Clarice." Clarice gave me a finger wave, and I headed to the elevator and back out to my car. It was warming up now, and I rolled the window down, letting in the autumn breeze as I drove. I dropped off the packages for the law firms first before I headed to the courthouse. And this is where I'm going to stop for today. It is a pretty long chapter, so we'll continue it another time. Thank you guys so much for joining me and spending some time with me today. I will see you all in the next video. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.